Okay, so we are in a series called Thy Will Be Done by Mindy Audlin. Mindy wrote the book, What If It All Goes Right? Which is going from, oh, what if everything goes wrong, to, hey, what if? And what they call it, we call it What If Upping. And we actually did that as a small group series, and it was wonderful. So Thy Will Be Done, she asked the question, what if God's will is for us to merge our spiritual self with our human self. And that makes perfect sense to me. I believe that that's really why we're here. First of all, I want to say in our human self, we're here to be in life. We're here to experience life and to have experiences and to embrace relationships and being adventurous and doing the things that we love to do. And at the same time, I do believe that we are here to wake up and to remember who we are and what we are, and to really be able to bring that more fully into expression in our physical life. Now, she talks about 5 spiritual disciplines that she believes, as we step into these, will help us to really step into that divine will of merging our spiritual self with our human self. And they are communion, connection, compassion, community, and challenge. So last week we talked about communion, and we talked about the importance of taking 10 to 15 minutes a day just to be in the silence, to be in the stillness. And the reason for that is that our minds are constantly going all the time. We live in a busy lives, and we've got so much that's stimulating our minds. And so when we take this time to just allow ourselves to be, to me, it's we open out the way in which, the Holy Spirit, the activity of God, the divine intelligence can pour itself into us. And remarkable things come out of that, because it really is that time of just listening. The second way that we talked about communing is that, it's not always this big, holy experience that we have when we connect with God. For some people, it is that. But that our connection with God is every day. And it's in everything. It's, walking out and breathing that fresh air. And it's that's the connection, or looking at the beauty that's all around us right now, and just being in those moments of connection, being with your children, being with people that you love. It's so many things. And in those moments, being awake and aware enough to go, thank you, because I know the oneness. And then we talked about some ways then that in a sense that Spirit is speaking to us, and that's through things like intuition and coincidences and synchronicities, and when all of a sudden you have aha moments, or something just clicks, or that person shows up that you've been thinking about. So those are all ways that we can say, wow, I am connected, and I'm so grateful for this. So that's about communion. So today, what we're talking about is expanding our spiritual selves through connection. Now, I really love what our daily word said today. As I continue to grow in spiritual awareness, I gather around me a circle of friends and family members who are walking the path of truth with me. These are people who, like me, are willing to see the spirit with spiritual eyes and to look for the good in every situation. We support one another. This is highly important. This is vital, that we have each other and that we begin to connect with each other in a deeper way, because we are spiritual family. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So I love this. Mindy shares that this is about connecting at a level of what can we create together. What is it that we can create together? That's exciting, because we're already moving in those directions of what it is that we can create together. And she says, coming home to who I am and to who we are together in relationship to each other. Really coming home to that awareness of what, who and what I really am, and then being with each other in that place. So I want to share with you some studies that were done on connection. Now, Bendy shares that studies have shown that connection is a survival skill, that it's actually something that we are hardwired for. So she shared that from Young University and Yale, that what they found in their studies was that people who are lonely or disconnected are 2 to 3 times more likely to have heart disease than people who are connected. And then at Brigham Young, they did a compilation of 148 studies with at least 7 years average on each of the studies. And one of the things they found is that isolation is dangerous for our health, that it is the equivalent, hear this, of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And it is actually worse for our health than obesity. Wow. And then at Exeter University in Britain, they said the most important predictor of our health is not how much we exercise, not what we eat, but the social groups that we are a part of, the connections, the various ones, and the connections through those social groups. And I thought it was interesting, too, because they talked about family meal time. Gosh, what's that? What's family meal time? 60 years ago, the average amount of time that a family spent together at mealtime was 90 minutes. Do you know what the average is today? Without electronics, 12 minutes. 12 minutes. So here's the thing that they found, is that when we have meals together with our family with no electronics, and we do this at least 3 times a week, that kids and teens will be less likely to be overweight. They will eat healthier and have a better relationship with their parents and get better grades. But not only that, kids and teens will be less likely to involve risky behavior such as drugs and alcohol and promiscuity. I'm thinking that's really a good reason to bring family meal time back together. But not only that, think about the times when you have gotten to sit and really have a meal and you talk. You just got to put the phones away. No phones at the table, and just be connected with each other. It's we've turned in to such a crazy society with our phones. We're not even connected when we're together because we've got our phones out and we're texting and we're checking things on Facebook. And we've got to start creating that time again when we can genuinely connect with each other. Connection is so important. When we come together, our brains actually synchronize. And they synchronize at whatever that highest level is. And that's why communion is the first part of this experience. Because when we take that time to commune in that 10 or 15 minutes, we fill our cup and we come then with this mind and these emotions of truth. And what happens is, because haven't you been with people where they're in that place and it lifts us up, it raises us up to that higher vibration. And so it's just really, really important for us to do. Well, I love nature, and I love how nature's constantly teaching us things. And I happened to buy on this little trailer for a movie based on this book by Peter Wohlleben, and his book is called The Secret Life of Trees. And so I think this is so relevant to us because of our connection. And so the root systems, he said, are all intertwined, they're interlinked, and what we call a tree is only what we see as visible from above the ground, but that actually we don't see the major part of its life that is taking place underneath the ground. And I thought this was interesting, that trees are not competitors, that they actually look after each other. And I love, there was a visual of a woman standing, and you could just see this right underneath the ground, this intertwining of all the root systems. But the interesting thing about that is each tree knows what its own root system is, but they're all intertwined. Well, what was really fascinating to me was that Peter he's a forester, and he had kind of lost his passion for his job, but then things just started coming up. And so he was walking one day where he walked all the time, and there were these 5 huge stones, and they were covered with moss. And so something just kind of pulled him, and so he lifted up the moss, and what he found was not a stone, but rather it was beechwood. It was actually wood underneath the stone that was hard. And so he said usually it takes just a couple of years for beech wood lying on the ground to decompose. But he said, what surprised me most was that I couldn't lift the wood. It was obviously attached to the ground in some way, so he took out his pocket knife and he made a little cut in the wood, and it was green inside, which totally shocked him, because he went on to say, this color is found only in chlorophyll, which makes new leaves. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. Reserves of chlorophyll are also stored in the trunks of living trees. This means only one thing, and that this piece of wood was still alive. And then he started to notice the remaining stones, and there were 5 of them, and they formed a distinct pattern that were arranged in a diameter of about 5 feet. And he said, what I had stumbled upon were the gnarled remains of an enormous ancient tree stump. And that all that was left was this. But the thing is, this tree had to have been felled some 500 to 600 years earlier. So he was like, how can this be? How can a tree that was felled 500 to 600 years earlier still have life in it? And he went on to say, beneath the mystery lay a fascinating frontier of scientific research that would eventually reveal that this tree was not unique in its assisted living, that, neighboring trees with all of their root systems interconnected, they literally help the other trees. And so these neighboring trees kept these stumps alive for 500 to 600 years. That's pretty remarkable, huh? And, and that's us. Trees don't do well by themselves. They're taking care of each other by making sure that the forest is alive and that there's a diversity within the forest. And this is the opportunity that we have. This is the opportunity. The thing is, you guys, we're connected. We are connected. We just forget that we're connected. We are so in our individual lives or in our tribes that we forget that we're connected to the whole, but we are interlinked in ways that we can't even begin to really and truly understand. So I want to share with you a story from the Bible, and this is where Jesus tells the disciples to go, they're going to go out on the fishing boat. And he tells them, go out because I need to go to the mountaintop. He's going to go to the mountaintop and he's going to pray. He's going to commune. He's going to fill his cup. So the disciples go out, and Jesus gets done, and he comes down to the edge, and he sees that they're way out there. So he walks on water. Of course, what would Jesus do? He walks on water. And as he's going out there, the disciples are afraid. And he says, don't be afraid. It's just me. And Peter says, well, if it's you, then tell me to come to you. And so Jesus said, come to me, Peter. And so Peter, a mere fisherman, gets out of the boat and he begins to walk on the water. He's focused on Jesus. He's focused on the Christ. He's focused on the possibility and potentiality. And water represents our subconscious mind. So it represents all of those underlying fears and doubts and things that are going on beneath the surface. Jesus is so enlightened, he can walk on top of that. This is the story could have happened. We don't know, but it's more of a metaphor. So Peter, all of a sudden, he takes his focus off and he starts seeing the big waves and the wind, and he starts to sink. And so in those moments that he starts to sink, he's in his fears and his doubts and worries, Jesus looks at him and he says this. And now Mindy says that most of the time we see this in our society as a very condescending thing, but I love the way she looks at it. So he says to him, "O ye of little faith, why would you doubt?" And he reaches out his hand in connection and he pulls Peter up. Well, the way Mindy looks at it is that he is saying, wow, here you are, Peter, one of the 12 disciples, and you're the only one who even had enough faith to step out of that boat. Oh, you of beginning faith, why would you doubt? I'm here to remind you that you can do it. You have everything you need. You can do it. You can walk on this water. And I'm going to remind you of that, and I am going to lift you up. And I love that because that makes so much more sense to me and this is what this is about. connecting with like-minded people. Let me ask you something. How many of us here today can say that we are surrounded in our neighborhoods, in our work environment, with our families, our friends, with total like-minded people? No, none of us. Because we are in community with each other. And the reality is we have a lot of negative people out there, and we have some very conservative Christians that don't believe like we believe, that don't, we really teach the potential and possibility that exists in each and every one of us, and that, we are, expressions of the divine. And so what happens is, hey, we may have this idea for something that would seem outside the realm of possibility. And the people around us may be saying, are you crazy? That's not possible. You can't do that. And so they're, instead of helping us to come above that, they're actually helping us to stay in the fear and the anxiety. Or maybe you decide that it's time for you to step into a relationship and you haven't had good luck in the past. And then your friends around you are saying, oh, no, don't do it. Be careful. But what we have here is we have a group of like-minded people. We are here to be connected with each other. We are here to be able to uplift and to support each other. But you guys, we have to get beyond this being here on Sunday morning, sitting in a seat and walking out the door. It has to be more than that. I appreciate so much my spiritual family. I mean, coming, and that's why I think coming to church on a Sunday morning or classes or whatever, it's that connection and it's that reminder again and again of what we know the truth is, so that we can, have that as a solid thing as we go out into our secular lives. And so we come back and we're reminded and we're reminded and we're reminded once again and once again and once again. So, not long after I started here, Dwayne Koppler, who is a very good friend of mine, he started telling me that these things that he saw in me, and I couldn't see them in myself at all. I mean, I was like a shadow of who I am today. But he would tell me this, and he would tell me this, and anytime he would tell me this, I'd put my head down like, no, that's not me. I don't see that for myself. But he continued to tell me all the time what he saw in me. And that he was like, the Christ, just saying, come up, come up, come up, because there's so much more of you. There's so much more for you. And I'm so grateful that, this was 27 years ago, so many years later. And I have to say, Dwayne was a big part of my being able to come into what I'm doing today. And, I have Kenneth Reitmeyer, who, calls me most Monday mornings and leaves me a kudo. He calls it a kudo. And he always tells me what I did good, what I did right. And it's like, that's what we have the opportunity to be here for each other. So the question is, how do we do that? Well, I first want to share with you Dee Richardson. She's our administrator, her letter for the newsletter this month, because I think it speaks a lot to this. She said, are you part of the in crowd? I have heard that some people think at Unity of Springfield we have cliques. After much contemplation, I came to the conclusion that just as Unity teaches, it is according to your perception. I know that as a child, I always wanted to be in the in crowd. I always felt like I was standing on the outside looking in, like I was less than. Well, friends, since becoming a Unitic, I am a part of the in crowd, and I want you to be also. It's not a group of snobs or people who won't accept you. Have you ever seen a more open, accepting group than Unity of Springfield? So this is your invitation to become a member of the in crowd. There's no secret code. There's no application. There's no fee. There's no obligation, and it's very easy. Volunteer. The reason it may appear that there are cliques is because volunteers work together and soon get to know each other. And most do not belong on only one team of volunteers. Most are on multiple teams. Without volunteers, we couldn't run the programs, classes, events, etc. that make up our schedule. So what team attracts you or speaks to your gifts? On the first Sunday of the month, which will be next Sunday, Michelle, who is doing our choir director, is going to be, she's our volunteer coordinator, will be out in the hallway with sign-up sheets for many teams, and there's a job for everyone. As a staff member and member of the congregation, I am so grateful for all of the volunteers. Let's surrender. I've heard this for years, the old 80-20 rule. And instead of 20% of the people doing 80% of the work, let's turn it around. And let's have 80% of the congregation involved in serving. I love the song, The Greatest Thing, which says, I want to know you more, I want to love you more, and I want to serve you more. And oh yes, if you're not already a member, why not take ownership and commit by becoming a member as well as a congregant? Always grateful, always D. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. And so, I look at something like what Michelle has created with our choir. My friends, they're volunteers. This is a volunteer group that's getting together. And I can guarantee you that just in the weeks that they've been meeting to sing together, they've connected in a different way. Our band is a group of volunteers, and they didn't know each other when they were coming into this, but they've created wonderful friendships. And there's so many opportunities to be involved here. One of the things I would say is next time we have our small groups, get involved in that. That'll be sometime in the spring. Wonderful way to get to know each other. On Friendship Sunday, which is next Sunday, don't hurry out the door. Go in to the fellowship hall, and we're going to have the spaghetti sauce cook-off, and we're going to and opportunities to once again connect with people beyond what you just see on Sunday morning. How many people just get up and man, they're out the door, we're gone. And this is our spiritual family. This is our family right here. Come to classes and men's and women's group. If you haven't been to a men's or women's group, it's a wonderful opportunity for the men to connect with men, women to connect with women, book studies, things like that. There's just a lot that we have the opportunity to be involved with here. And again, it is so important that we have this opportunity to connect in ways that we do become friends with each other. That in those times that we're kind of struggling with something, that we can call somebody else. And they can hear us. They're not going to try and change it for us. They can hear us. But that also they can gently remind us of what that greater truth is. And I want to share with you that after the 9:15 service, because I've talked about, how, we're very positive. And a couple had lost their son about 8 months ago to suicide. And she said to me, because she is posting this on Facebook and posting her very authentic experience through this. And I've told her before, I so appreciate this because it's going to help so many people. And she said to me on the way out, when you talked about positivity, I'm not really doing a positive thing. And I said, oh my gosh, it's not about, positivity isn't about that we're always going to be happy, happy, joy, joy. That's not always going to happen. But it's more about, and so maybe I need to change that term, because I said, what's our mission? It's to empower each other to be authentic. And that her authenticity, I said, that actually is a very positive thing that you're doing because it's helping other people. So it's not always that, because I would never go to them and say, it's going to be okay. I would never do that because that would be so disrespectful to what the experience is that they're having. But we find ways to be with each other in the spiritual community that truly does uplift and support and love each other. There's a beautiful quote I want to end with. It's, the spiritual path is not a solo endeavor. In fact, the very notion of a self who is trying to free him or herself is a delusion. We are in it together, and the company of spiritual friends help us realize our interconnectedness. And that is an amen, Tara Brock. So your assignment, if you would like to accept it this week, is before you leave here today, introduce yourself to somebody that you don't know. Introduce yourself to somebody that you don't know. And I want to encourage you to come next Sunday. Bring a friend. That's what Friendship Sunday is for. Bring a friend. Bring a family member. And let's go into the fellowship hall. And instead of just staying separate, let's come together. And we could even ask each other, hey, where are you from? What do you do? So we could be doing that instead. And we could do that. You know what? It doesn't have to just be on Friendship Sunday. We could actually, every week, make it a point to meet somebody else. I want to encourage you to get involved in spirit groups. when they come around the next time. But the biggest thing, guys, is I really want to encourage you to connect with each other, is to let this be something that is deeper than what it is just here on Sunday mornings and on Wednesday. You will never regret it. You will never regret it. Namaste. Namaste.